Hey guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Melissa Siegel. I'm a professor of migration studies, and this is a channel about all things migration. Today we are talking about return migration, what it is, and what are the different types of return. So, what is return migration? Well, there's no universally accepted definition of what return migration actually is, but really in its simplest form, we can think of return migration as really just the decision of a migrant to leave the host country that they are staying in and to return to the country of origin. An even more basic definition of return is someone leaving where they currently are and going back to an origin point. So of course we're talking about return in regards to migration, and oftentimes return is considered part of the migration life cycle or the migration process more generally, with the idea being that a migrant goes to a country of destination, stays there for some time, and then returns home. Now, that may be the case, but not all migrants go through this so-called migration life cycle. Some people can actually go abroad and stay there and never come back to their country of origin, or at least not permanently come back to their country of origin. Now, we're already starting to get into the nitty-gritty. So let's talk about the different types or forms of return that we can see. Now, I think often when you hear the term return, or when this is discussed in policy circles or maybe even in the media, return is often referring to permanent return or longer term return, meaning that people go back to their countries of origin or where they have come from with the idea of staying there longer term or maybe permanently, maybe for the rest of their lives. Maybe they will end up retiring there. And a lot of policy and programming in the past has gone into these more permanent types of return. However, we have other types of return. So we can actually think about three different types of return more generally. We can think about permanent return, temporary return, and virtual return. Now, temporary return is also something that we have seen more development projects and development programming going into. So temporary return means someone going back to their place of origin or their country of origin for a shorter period of time. This could be for, 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 months, maybe even a year, but not with the intention to stay there permanently, but again, to leave and to maybe go back to the country where they were residing previously. Now, within temporary return, we also have what are called return visits. And these are usually the kinds of return that people do to visit family members, friends, maybe go on holiday back in their country of origin. And we might see this happening more often, but also usually for shorter periods of time. One of the areas that we often see a lot of programming done in, particularly with regard to how migration can have, really positive developmental effects. Of course, I have talked about this also in the channel previously, so if you're interested in how migration can affect countries of origin or the country that migrants are coming from, and how this is often tied with development and very positive ways that migrants can contribute, of course, you can have a look at my video on the channel on that here. I'll make sure to put it here, and I will also make sure to link it in the description below, as I usually do. Now, many countries have these kind of return development programs, and the whole idea of these programs is that a migrant comes back to their country of origin for usually between 2 weeks, 3 months, but it can also be for longer, with the whole goal to try to give back to the country, with the idea to give knowledge transfer and to do something that can be very beneficial for the country. So this could mean going to work, for example, at an educational institution or in a healthcare institution like a hospital, but it could also mean doing things in government services and helping to set up better infrastructures or better way of doing things, like helping to revamp HR or financing. It could also mean putting into place different types of exam regulations at a university. But the whole idea of this kind of return and these programs is to have a very clear knowledge transfer component, so that even after that person leaves and goes back to the country where they have been residing, that at least some of that knowledge still stays there in the country. So that's our second type of return, more temporary return, which can be through these kinds of programs, or it can just be temporary return visits to visit family members, friends. And we know that in both of these cases, it can be very beneficial because we can see knowledge transfers, we can see values transfers, but of course people can also bring back capital with them, and they can bring back money through the form of social remittances that they can also transfer when they come home. Now, the third type of return we can talk about is virtual return. So for return to be beneficial, or for migrants in the countries of destination to be able to give back to their country of origin, this does not mean that they actually need to return permanently. A lot of the previous focus, especially in policy, has been all about trying to get people to come back to their countries of origin permanently, but that is not necessary. What is necessary is that links are kept, and links are created, and links are nurtured so that migrants are willing to give back to the country of origin. And in this case, it can also be done virtually. Nowadays, we see so many programs being, for example, taught online. So the diaspora abroad can also contribute to educational programs back in the country of origin without ever even physically coming back, but they can do this virtually. Also in the healthcare space, we see more and more nowadays that doctors can consult on different cases or even help with surgeries via things like Zoom or Skype, and they can do this virtually. You can also send scans or images or pictures virtually that someone can then look at and give their opinions on. So there are ways that return can actually be done virtually, and we can see this engagement in a more virtual space without people actually having to physically return. So I think it's important that we recognize that there are these three different types of return: permanent return, temporary return, and virtual return, all of which can be very beneficial when we think about migration and development. Now, of course, there is also a difference between chosen return and coerced return or forced return, and we will get into that in another video. If this video was helpful, of course, feel free to share it around. Give us your comments also on maybe your own experiences with return. And of course, if you haven't done so already, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the videos that we upload on a regular basis on this channel. And I definitely hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.